Shortly after we filmed yesterday's video, we got some news that the Browns are actually going to interview Tommy Rees. So I wanted to include that in today's episode. A little bit of time traveling going on right now. So I'm going to throw it back to old me before I knew this news came down, but the rest of the video is still very relevant. Coming up on today's show, I want to talk about some of the buzz and the rumors out there swirling around the Browns' offensive coordinator job because one name continues to come up over and over again, and it's someone in-house, and that is tight ends coach Tommy Rees. So Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report put this out recently. I want to share it with you guys. The Browns think highly of Tommy Rees, who served this past year in the role of tight ends coach and passing game specialist. That second title, largely made up, was given to Rees as a sign of respect in how they thought he could benefit the team. When it comes to candidates like Tommy Rees, all we have to really go off of is word of mouth. I mean, we can look at the way the Browns tight ends played, and Jordan Akins played very well this year. I don't know if we can absolutely say that's a product of Tommy Rees coaching right there. Tommy Rees was a quarterback in college, so I don't know if that's really his specialty. I think that's more of his foot in the door. But when it comes to candidates like Rees, and I mean, by and large, when we're talking about play call or talking about candidates for a coordinator job that are coming from like a position coach, we don't have a ton to go off of. Like, we can look and see how that unit played, but that's not always going to be a direct reflection of them. What if that unit didn't have a lot of investments made into it and they weren't working with a whole lot? I wouldn't hold that against the coach. But when it comes to Tommy Rees and the word of mouth out there around him, the guy comes highly praised. He was, of course, the Notre Dame quarterback, almost 15 years ago now. But then he got a gig with Northwestern, a brief stint in the NFL, more like an internship for coaching, and then he went back to his alma mater. He was the Notre Dame quarterback coach for a bit, then the offensive coordinator. Then he left to go to Alabama and was their offensive coordinator in 2023, and then this past season he served as the Browns tight ends coach. You know that graphic that gets popped up a lot about the Washington Redskins when they had Shanahan, Raheem Morris, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel? It's like, who else am I missing? Matt LaFleur, thank you. How do they let those guys go? Well, they couldn't make him all the head coach. I'm going to go on a limb here and say Tommy Rees might be kind of one of those guys. He's pretty young, and he's accomplished a lot. Nick Saban, in his last season as the Alabama football head coach, hired Tommy Rees, someone he didn't cross paths with, someone who didn't have head coaching, experience elsewhere, to be the play caller for his team. If Nick Saban approves, I approve. And I hate Nick Saban. Go Vols. But we have to at least give him his respect that he probably knows a thing or two about hiring coaches. So fast forward to year one with the Browns, and we want to evaluate the tight ends. I'd say the tight ends play pretty well. Jordan Akins had maybe one of the best years of his career. And so I'm definitely on the higher end for Tommy Rees. Seems like a great candidate. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Browns are anxious to make sure he stays in Cleveland because other teams might be trying to pry him away. And I'll expand on which team that could be because I have one in particular in mind. But first, make sure you turn on your notifications. When hires are made, we get a video out to you. When the Browns hired their new offensive line coach, we got a video out to you. 12.2% of you have your notifications on and set to all. So join and help us grow that percentage by clicking the bell icon down below and turning on your notifications for when news like this eventually breaks. Another name to keep an eye on, I just want to put on your radar, is Clint Kubiak. He's got some ties to Kevin Stefanski. They overlap together in Minnesota back when Stefanski was the OC there. Kubiak is the offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. He's not a free agent. He's not unemployed, so the Saints would have to agree to let him go, but they're looking for a new head coach. Chances are that new coach is going to want his own OCs, so good chance that they're not going to keep him hostage in the Big Easy. But Kubiak, along with Rees, another name to watch for. Now, I've got more on Tommy Rees in just a moment, but first, I do want to give a big special shout-out to our sponsor today, Fume. Have you heard that the flavored air category is quickly becoming the leading alternative to vaping and smoking? It's a whole new movement towards better habits, led by the sponsor of today's video, Fume. It is an award winning flavored air device. Fume fills the void ditching a bad habit can leave. You can still have something to reach for. It is not a vape, and it can be used as an alternative to vaping or quitting vaping. Fume's design is also about more than just flavor. It's an awesome fidget tool with magnets and clicks that can help calm anxiety. Fume has already helped over 300,000 people build better habits. Try Fume today, and if you order the Journey Pack now using my code CHATSPORTS, you'll get a free Fume topper, an awesome accessory to level up your experience. Go to tryfume.com/chatsports or scan the QR code. All of that information is in the comments and description of today's episode. Check out Fume today if you are trying to ditch a bad habit. Thank you to Fume for sponsoring today's episode. So getting back to Tommy Rees and why the Browns might be a little bit on the anxious side to anoint him as their next offensive coordinator. Well, Bill Belichick, who for now is the UNC football head coach. Well, the next man up on their wish list was Tommy Rees. And one fear the Browns might have is, well, clearly word's out on Tommy Rees being an up-and-coming coach. And you know who's going to be a head coach in just a matter of days probably with the New England Patriots? Mike Vrabel. And I wonder if Vrabel, when he gets to New England, one of the first calls he makes is, hey, that tight end coach in Cleveland, he seems like a really bright young offensive mind. Let's get him over to Foxborough. Just like how Bill Belichick took on a young Josh McDaniels. And so the Browns might want to protect Tommy Rees and not let him leave and not let him get out the building by promoting him to offensive coordinator. Now, Tommy Rees might have some negotiating saying, well, I'm not going to be the OC in Cleveland if I can be the OC and the play caller over in New England. So will Kevin Stefanski allow Rees to call plays? That might be the negotiation. And maybe the answer is no, and that's why they're kind of already doing some homework on Clint Kubiak because Stefanski feels like, hey, I'm a good play caller, just not really with Deshaun Watson. But the new offense isn't going to be designed around Deshaun Watson, and then I'm back in my, strong suit. So something to watch for as well. Speaking of Bill Belichick, another thing to keep an eye on when it comes to Tommy Rees is if the Raiders hire him to be their head coach, because there's some traction maybe about Brady trying to bring Belichick over to Las Vegas, well, now the UNC gig is wide open again. I know who the first phone call they'll make is Tommy Rees, who was the runner-up for the job. So the Browns might have some extra motivation to try and get something done soon. Not that that would probably get in the way of it, but the longer they let it drag out if they really like Rees, the more open Rees could be to maybe going to UNC if that job were to become available, or follow Vrabel wherever he ends up. Some other news I want to share here before we get on with the rest of today's episode. The Titans are seeking permission to interview Browns assistant GM Catherine Hickman. And what that means for the Browns is if she is hired by Tennessee, the Browns would get 2 compensatory third-round draft picks for 2025 and 2026. So they would add to their 9 draft picks, and they would have 3 third-round draft picks. So not the worst draft capital. Actually, far from the worst. Some view it as the absolute best draft capital. They have the 2nd overall pick in the draft. They have the 1st pick in round 2 because the NFL draft order rotates round after round to, spice things up a little bit and to keep it moving based on record tiebreakers. And then they've got 2 picks in round number 3. So possibly more day 2 draft picks coming to Cleveland if Tennessee hires Hickman. All right, some other things I want to talk about here as we all gear up for, a couple of big college football games. We're filming today's show during our live show, which airs Wednesday afternoons. And we have some big college football semifinal games. Penn State against Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, and then Ohio State versus Texas in the Cotton Bowl. So while you're watching these games, I want you to keep a close eye on a couple of players because we are back in round 1 of the draft, and there could be a future Brown on the field for one of these 4 teams. Starting with Penn State and the most obvious candidate, Abdul Carter. He did get banged up in their last game, but he appears to be okay, although college football injuries are so just unclear. Guys are not okay, or sometimes they are. We never really get a lot of transparency on that. However, keep an eye on 11 for the Nittany Lions. He was an off-ball linebacker. It's his first year at that true edge position, and he has grown into it tremendously. Year one at a new job, and he's got 10 sacks. Imagine what he's going to be like in 2 or 3 years when he has more coaching and more experience and more reps at that position. Another guy to watch for, and this is not for round one, but maybe later on in the draft, Dane Brugler says to keep an eye on Mitchell Evans. This is the tight end for Notre Dame. He was injured last year, tore his ACL, so a little bit of a slow start this season. Plus, college football is not designed for tight end stats. However, I do think the Browns could stand to gain by adding a tight end in Njoku and his injury history. And after that, there's really not a whole lot of depth at the position. So Evans could be a name to keep an eye on if you want to sound smart in front of your friends for a day 3 draft pick for Cleveland. As for Texas, Kelvin Banks is a little bit of a polarizing prospect. On one hand, he's been a really good left tackle for Texas. So what's the problem? I'm not really sure what the problem is, other than people don't seem to really like him a whole lot at the next level. Now, maybe he will have a great NFL career. I mean, that's a little bit of a crystal ball moment, but watch Texas's left tackle, because the Browns trade back from the 2nd overall pick and they want to get their next franchise left tackle. Banks could be in play. As for Ohio State's defense, what about the defensive tackle for the Buckeyes, Williams? I think the Browns could be looking to add another interior defensive lineman. I'm just thinking about the injury that Mike Hall sustained at the end of last season. If the Browns have concerns just based on what a turbulent year one it was for Hall, I don't think Williams is a candidate for round 1, but maybe someone they keep an eye on in rounds 2 and 3 of the draft. Before we sign off, let's pick a card. We have Cullen Brown with us. Cullen, which card do you want to go with?
I'm going to go with, we just went, prospect kind of analysis there. There's 4 of them. Let's go 4 diamonds.
Okay, I like it. I'm going to go with 6 of clubs. No. Ace of diamonds. Ace of diamonds. Thanks so much to Fume for sponsoring today's video. Scan the QR code and use code CHATSPORTS to get free Fume Topper when you order your Journey Pack today.